Hey guys, I've been spending a lot of time working on my property in New York, hence the channel. But one of the things that's bothered me is I haven't really spent much time working on my property in Florida, which is my main home. So, and the biggest project in this place is my kitchen. It's original from the house, which was built in 1963, so it's older than I am, and it's dated, and it needs to be updated, but I don't have a ton of cash. So how do you fix up an old kitchen? Personally, I used Rustoleum Countertop paint. This video is going to show you how I did that, and for essentially the cost of one cabinet, if I were to buy cabinets for the kitchen, I was able to resurface all of my existing cabinets with a lot of elbow grease and just a few basic materials to change this dated kitchen from 1963 into something a little more modern. Now, in typical me fashion, I got excited about the project and jumped right in and did not take a whole bunch of before pictures. So this image you're seeing here is captured from another video I shot. I'm going to jump into the video now. This is the very beginning of the process. I wanted to test the process out on one cabinet, and I picked the worst one. It had lost its linoleum years before and had just been painted badly. So this is me taking this project from start to finish. I hope you guys learned something. I promise I'm going to speed up through the boring sanding and painting parts and only slow down where I've got useful, hopefully, information to provide. All right, here we go. Okay guys, I apologize for the appearance, and it's a bit messy here because I've got everything out so that I can work on this project, but I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview. I'm not going to force you to watch hours of sanding. I'm going to hopefully have sped that up. But the history here is these cabinets have been in place. They were built in place when the house was built in 1963, I want to say. I've had this faux wood paneling. I don't know if you can see that. This might be a better shot. Which is okay, but it's dated. And it's just kind of like not what I want. I want something cleaner and simpler. So, but it's Formica. So this is number one glued on, which is why there are years of this glue on here, which is why it's so hard. And you see most of it is around the edges. So you'll see I had to hit it a lot harder around the edges than in the field here. And that's just because they tack the crap out of it with contact cement all the way around the edges. So I taped everything off. Before I paint, I'm going to run a nice bead of caulk down around to fill in all the seams, so that'll be nice and clean looking. You may have noticed I didn't do the top edge too much, and that's because I'm using this little tool that I have here. It's kind of cool. It's a Velcro sanding block that's designed to use the same exact 5-inch sanding pads that you would use on a random orbital sander. I think I got this from Taylor Toolworks. If I can find the link, I'll stick it in there. I don't get sponsorships from anybody because I'm not monetized on YouTube, but this is a very cool tool, and it makes these sanding discs a lot more useful. You don't have to buy a bunch of specialty sandpaper. You can use one kind of sandpaper for everything. And they have all different kinds of shapes, like little wedge shapes for getting into corners and all sorts of cool stuff. But this fits nicely right up underneath there. So I was able to, this is 120 grit sandpaper as well. So I was able to get nice and tight to the edges of the bottom of the thing, and then in like the areas around the drawer. This drawer I was able to pull out, but this drawer has like little, again, built in place, there's little sticks of wood that are glued to the bottom of the drawer that keep it aligned on the rail. This is not like your normal drawer rails attached to the side of the drawers. These are old school. So there's a wooden rail that the drawer rides on, and then the bottom of the drawer has two little chunks of wood that are ride right alongside this rail. So when it moves in and out, it keeps the drawer stable. So I didn't want to screw with that. I could have taken those off, but I didn't want to mess those up. So I literally left it on. I sanded around it. These drawer fronts, unfortunately, are Formica. So as I'm touching it, I can feel it like flaking off. The tops and sides, and as well as the front, have, these are chipboard, not Formica. So all around and on the front, there's a Formica side, but the actual piece of wood itself, wood, quote unquote, is Formica from 1963. So it is a little bit fragile. Not so much that it's going to fall apart in the drawer. It's going to fall apart, but it's fragile enough that I don't want to mess with it too much. I did all around this with hand sanding, and then I tried to catch it with the palm sander. And so that's all roughed up and ready to accept paint. And then on the palm sander, this is pretty cool. I found this Cubitron sandpaper from 3M. Now, I got it at Taylor Toolworks, but this is available pretty much anywhere. And you can see it uses a special, I want to say it's like a silicate crystal, little cubes. So it's a super tough, and it's bonded to this mesh. So as you can see on my palm sander, or random orbit sander, you've got the vacuum holes that go to the exhaust. Well, normally with sandpaper, those are covered up. But with this Cubitron sandpaper, because it's on a mesh backing, you can see through it. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see through it. Almost all the sanding dust gets sucked through this and then out through what your vacuum system is. Again, I don't get paid by anybody for this, but if you have not used this Cubitron sandpaper, it's a little bit more expensive, but it lasts a lot longer just because the dust doesn't build up and plug it like you can see it starting to do on the standard paper. And it reduces your dust to almost nothing. Like I sanded this whole thing down, including the fronts and the sides, and a lot of sanding on this side. And this is all of the dust that it produced. Everything else was captured through the sandpaper and into my shop vac, which is in the garage. So I highly recommend this. And again, Taylor Toolworks has it, but you can pick this up on Amazon or anywhere. If you can get sales on it, it comes in packages like a combo pack where I have like 280 grit, 120 grit, 180 grit, and all the way up to 320, I think. So I bought like literally 4 or 5 of those just because it was a good deal. It was on sale, and you know, stick it in a drawer. It doesn't go bad. But this stuff is amazing. So this is just about ready. I feel like I've got a couple more spots like right through here that I need to sand a bit, and then I think this is pretty close. I got to get up into the corner, but I'm going to have to do that by hand. Everything else is feeling pretty close. It's gritty because of the contact cement. And the problem is I would start to sand through the contact cement, and then I would get a big chunk of it and it would be sticky behind. And so I'd have to sand over that entire spot. You saw me kind of feathering it out just to make sure that if I'm sanding like this spot here, that it doesn't have like over sanding. So I would try to feather it out to the rest of the stuff. But this is just about there. I got just another couple of minutes sanding. I'm not gonna force you guys to watch that. And then it'll be ready for cleanup. I've already got it taped off, which I forgot I need to pull this tape. That's actually pretty tight to the wall, but I'm gonna run a bead of silicone caulk back in there behind it so that this is all smooth. And then this will be ready for paint. I'm gonna put on a bonding primer next. I'm following this paint that I bought. I'm using this Rustoleum Countertop paint. And ostensibly this is designed to go over like the old Formica countertops like you see I have here, which is just hideous. And I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I'll probably maybe do an epoxy coat over the top of this eventually, but right now I'm focusing on the cabinets to see if I can modernize them. But this got mixed reviews. Some people had a great experience with it, and primarily those people used a bonding primer first, let that completely dry, and then did 2 or 3 coats, and that's on the countertop, 2 or 3 coats. It's in this light gray color, which I know is gonna look industrial, but I think against the cream of the, like my house, my entire house is cream and brown. So I think it's gonna make a pop of color out here. It's got quite a bit of blue in it. And I think it's gonna look good. I'm not gonna do that on the countertops, but the cabinets themselves will get a coat of bonding primer, and I just picked up Valspar from Lowe's. It was whatever they had there. And then 2 coats of this countertop paint, which is like an epoxy paint. And so I'm trying to scratch it on the lid here, and it doesn't even scratch. And that's just a little drop that they put on at Lowe's. So when I have a bonding primer to smooth it all out, and then 2 coats of this, I think it's gonna, number one, look nice and smooth and look like it's, you know, like a resin material. And number 2, it's gonna be hard. And I'm not gonna be setting things on it. It's the sides of a cabinet and drawer fronts and doors and things. So it'll be easy to clean up. And theoretically, it'll be nice and hard and should last a good long time. So I need to refresh this kitchen, mostly for myself because I don't plan on selling anytime soon. But if I do it right, it should be good enough that whoever buys the house can use it for a few years, and they're gonna gut this kitchen anyway. Let's be realistic, it's old. It was built in 1963. So I think this will, with a lot of sweat equity and just a little bit of cost, I think overall my paint costs and everything were like maybe 175 bucks, and that includes brand new doorknobs and hinges and everything else for the cabinets. So they'll have a whole new updated look from this old gold from the 1960s and these, you know, ceramic knobs that we put on, which are nice, but also dated, to a new brushed nickel that's going to match with the sink hardware. And it's just going to, I think, look really great against this light gray. Good morning. So back at it again this morning. Yesterday I spent all day on and off sanding, filling with wood filler, resanding, smoothing, sanding, finally painting with, I don't know, 3 or 4 coats of a primer, a bonding primer. Cooper is not appreciative. So I have a little bit of taping to do. You can see in this back corner, the blue tape is not my friend. I'm going to switch to frog tape. I filled in the gaps along the edge here with a nice bead of caulk. Once that's prepped, I'm going to begin painting with the Rustoleum Countertop paint. I got smart this morning and I made myself a knee pad out of some old Harbor Freight floor mats that I have. And they give off this dust, which you can probably see some of it here on my leg. They're just filthy. So they're great for walking on in a garage floor situation, but they're not great for kneeling. I had to wash the side of the cabinet here because I touched them and got it on my hands and didn't realize, and then got gray dust all over the side of the cabinet, which I wasn't real happy about. So this should go smoothly. I gotta tell you, I am not a huge fan of sanding, and this cabinet had just years of contact cement from, you know, the 60s. I could be here for a week filling and sanding and filling and sanding, and my goal is on Labor Day weekend, which it is, to get this one cabinet done. This is a perfect concept, and this is the worst one. It's not going to be perfect. It's not. And I'm okay with that. I'm going to get it as good as possible. And the key to painting, which you guys probably already know, but the key to any painting project is take the time to mask it off. Just take the time to mask it off. I know you say you're good at cutting in. I think I'm good at cutting in. I am pretty good at cutting in, quite honestly, but it's just not worth it. Buy a roll of tape for $7 or $8 and take 15 minutes to run tape around everything. Thankfully, you can see the big white blobs probably on my stove, where I'm glad I put that tape on there, because otherwise I'd have to be trying to get this bonding primer off of my stove. It's just, trust me on this, trust me. Take 15 minutes, spend $8, mask it off. Enough said. So I got a number of these plastic trays They're specifically sized for the rollers I'm using. I just realized I very nearly made a mistake again, because I was so intent on talking about masking off that I forgot to mask off the wall so I don't paint it. So here we go, following my own advice. The other thing that I've learned, and I actually got this from Adam Savage, he has a testing channel, the guy who used to do the Mythbuster stuff. There's no need to try and pull a long piece of tape. Just use a bunch of small pieces of tape. You're going to save yourself a lot of frustration in getting that exact line exactly right. And it doesn't matter how it looks, it's masking tape. You're going to peel it off and throw it away when you're done. So rather than try and stretch out a giant long piece of tape and get it exactly perfect, just use a bunch of short lengths and you can get a much cleaner edge. One short length, probably going to get this done in 3 or 4. 2, 3. See, nice, straight, continuous line. I didn't need to stress about, getting the angle right on a giant long piece of tape. 3 short pieces of tape does exactly the same thing. Nobody's going to be grading you on this. So make your life easier and use short pieces of masking tape when you're doing a painting job. All right, so we're going to see if I can do this without. I am terrible at stern paint. I always get it all over everything, quite frankly. I got this like a week ago, 4 or 5 days ago. So last weekend I think I went to Lowe's and made the paint guy's life miserable. The reason is this paint is supposed to be tinted in just these colors. So they have computer programs for all of these tones. None of these are the color that I want. It doesn't mean you can't make this a different color, but none of these tones, like this is the closest, and that's way too dark. And so there was a good hour and a half of experimentation, and thank you, Lowe's guy, for being patient with me. The problem is this paint has like a purple base. It's the only paint that they sell that has a slightly purple base. So the paint by itself isn't white. It's like a very, very, very white, light colored lilac. And so every color you put into it, you're fighting against that purple. So we wound up with like a super light, almost white green. And it neutralized the red in the purple, which left me with this slightly bluish gray color, which makes sense if you are looking at, the color wheel. Opposite the red is green, and purple is a combination of red and blue. So if you knock that red out, you're going to be left with the blue that was in that original purple tinge, and then also a neutral gray. Because that's how your eye does it. Your eye is mixing colors by seeing what's next to each other and blending those things together. And so if you try and just use the color gray or black, it's never going to actually look like what you want it to look like. So try and mix your colors. Color wheels are everywhere. They don't cost anything. You can get them off of the internet. And you'll get much, much better tones of grays if you're mixing them yourself. It's a little bit more of a pain, but you'll get exactly the color you want instead of sort of the color you want. Okay, this is going to be a long form, and I will speed it up when I get into the actual painting part, but I wanted you guys to see the process that I go through here. These things, don't ever get a normal paint scraper. Get one of these. They're a little more expensive, but I'll tell you what, it has a really cool sharp point getting into corners like I did. It has a really cool pry tool. It has a lot of beef behind it for opening can lids, just like this. Right? And then this, oh my God, that paint. I have a fan in the window because this paint is like, it's like a dry erase marker, except it's like a dry erase marker that's 4 feet wide. It smacks you in the face with that, with that obnoxious odor. So I have, it's hot, it's 80 degrees out. It's going to probably be 85 degrees today here in Florida. And I have the window open with a fan in it because I need to blow this out of my house. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to live in here without getting some kind of migraine. Anyway, back to the scraper. This right here is the coolest thing. And let me show you why. Try and clean out a foam roller, or a regular roller for that matter, because you can't, you try to wash it, you try to get the paint out of it, you try to squeeze it like that, and you're covered with paint. This right here, you run it down, it squeegees the paint right off. I'll show you that later. It squeegees like 90% of the paint out of this roller, and this is foam. The paint penetrates right to the plastic core on these things. But with this thing, you can squeegee most of it out, and then washing is super easy. Like I've got the one from yesterday where I did this base coat, just soaking in some water. I cleaned it up as much as possible, then let it soak in water, and it'll be fine. I'll take it out, I'll dry it off, and then I'll reuse it. Because these things have a lot of life in them, and all this stuff is expensive. So back to painting, here we go. I'm gonna get this on here. I'm gonna start by cutting in. I cut in around the edges. This is how I always paint. I'm gonna get this in the thing. This is the color we're working with. I don't know if you can see that, but it's like a very light gray. It's probably going to dry just a shade darker than that. And I need to get my... Alright, this is the one from yesterday. So, once you get them on, they make the job of pouring paint out of these cans so much easier. Make sure it's seated down well. It just fits over the rim. And they fit tight. They're hard to get on. But once you get them on, I don't know if I got on my hand there, they make the job of getting the paint out of the can so much easier. So I'm going to do this. I said I wasn't going to, but I'm going to anyway. I just want to make sure it's stirred up really well. And it is. I didn't even need to do that. Okay. So let's get this over that. Not bad. Wow, this is terribly, it smells horrible. And then we'll use this. Not going to let it go to waste. So I need to cut in around the edges. There we go. Let's see what it looks like. This is the first time I'm seeing this too, guys. Very light. That's lighter than I thought it was going to be. But it dries a shade darker, so. Okay, well, that's interesting. All right, get this out of the way. Let's get some paint in here. Now I got 2 cans of this. I hesitate to put this in my finger because I think it's going to come off. I got 2 cans of this, so that should last a good long time. We'll find out. So you see what I mean? Already a big drip down here. This is why you take the time to mask. Yeah, I like that. This has to, I'm going to do 2 coats of this. It's pretty bulletproof, but I'm going to let it dry 12 hours in between coats. So it's important to get this started early. I'm going to do a little experiment, guys. So these foam rollers are nice, but they tend to drag a little bit. So I'm going to just lightly oil up this little metal shaft that the foam roller sits on. Now, the inside of it that sits around this is plastic. So I'm not concerned about the spray oil leaching through into the paint because it's like a solid plastic core. So that I'm not worried about, but this should, in theory, we'll find out that right now, should make this slide easier. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a huge deal. Okay. Well, we'll see how it works out. Okay, I hate oil-based paints, but here we are. Another pro tip, I'm not a pro, when you're cleaning brushes with oil-based paint using mineral spirits, have two containers. Have a dirty container of mineral spirits and a clean container of mineral spirits. So just like with washing, right? When that brush is fully loaded, you just kind of got it as dry as you could. You go to clean it, put it in the dirty bin. Rinse it out as much as possible. Get as much of it out as you can. Now, actually squeeze it with a rag to make sure you get as much of it out. Then put it into the clean one, and it will clean up faster. All right, we're going to dump a little bit more in here. That's probably overkill for what we need to do, but we will find out. And now I touched it. Now I got to get it off my finger. Yeah, that roller, that is a huge improvement. I got to tell you. Having that that spray oil on there, because it was sticky yesterday when I was trying to roll it, and if you've ever used a roller and it just like hangs up, you don't get a smooth roll. Wow, that is nice. So I'm doing like a little bit of a zigzag stroke. I go up and then I come down at an angle and then I reverse that. It helps to cover it. And then you got to wind up going back over with one of these long sweeping strokes to get rid of your pattern. Very lightly, I'm not putting any pressure on this brush at all. I'm just letting the brush smooth things over, and then I'll check it to see if I have any bare spots, but no, it's actually covering pretty well. I poured out way too much paint, I think, because this is covering really well. That bonding primer made a huge difference as far as how much paint I'm going to need. I can't imagine doing this over this cabinet if I hadn't put the primer on and it was all different shades of color. Back over here. I got one more drawer to do this one here that's pulled out. So I'm going to do that off camera and I'll come back to you guys. Okay, wow. This is better than I thought it was going to be. The jury's out. I got to wait and see what it looks like when it dries. It might dry up a little bit too dark, but right now, to my eyes, it's not, it's not white, obviously, because you can see on the edge of the drawer there, the bright white is different, but it is such a light shade of gray that it's going to provide just a pop of like a bluish color, but not overwhelming. So I promised you I'd show you this. So check this out. Roller. Well, there's one reason why you wouldn't want to put the oil on the roller. I'll have to do it backwards. So just like that. You see all of that paint that came out? That is all good paint. It soaks down into those rollers. I tap it a little bit. But there's a ton of paint left in here. So I'm just going to get this cleaned out. I have got a dozen of these rollers. I think it was like, $8 for 6 of them. I'm not going to save this. I do not want to try and clean this out. So I'm going to toss this. I'm going to take this paint that I have left over, which is quite a bit, and I'm going to carefully pour it back into the pan. Then I'm just going to let this skin over and harden and peel it out. I'm not going to try and wash the pan. Okay, well, I was almost ready to be done, and I totally forgot that I have to do these doors. So I guess I didn't pour too much paint after all. Okay, so I am in the thick of it right now. I have a painting station set up here with some 2x4s and sawhorses in my dining room after pushing my table, which is covered with painting supplies. This area here is also covered with painting supplies and stuff that I had to move off my counter. My entire kitchen is shrouded in plastic to keep the sanding dust from getting into the cupboards because I didn't want to empty everything. We have this cabinet is in the beginning of the prep stages, so all of the old hinge holes have been filled with wood putty, and all of the loose Formica has been pulled off, sanded on the back to clean off the old glue, and new contact cement applied. So I've got to wait for this to dry to a state where I can sand it to 120 grit and get this down flat. And then the next stage is to prime it. So this section has been filled, sanded, and primed. So you can see it's all nice and flat looking. Just ignore the inside shelves, but all the outside has this nice flat finish. And this is a bonding primer applied after every surface has been sanded to 120 grit. I also have masked off around the edges to partially keep the paint off of the little bump down, but also because I need to fill all the gaps with caulk, which has been done. It looks like I need a little bit more fill up in this area. It looks like it's pulled back in a bit, which is understandable. That was kind of a really large gap, but that needs to be filled with a final time. And the goal is to get, and I've got it done all the way around to here. So it is a giant mess right now, unfortunately. The goal is to get this all to the point where it's primed and all looking the same. And then in one day, hopefully, or one weekend, I can go through and do the laminate paint, because that is almost like an enamel, and it has got an extremely awful smell. It just outgasses, and it still stinks. I did that almost a week ago, and it still smells. I put the tape on in short strips like I talked about, but I always overlap them in the same way. So if you overlap them in the same direction, and then you peel it from the opposite direction, you should be able to peel it all off like it's one big piece of tape. So let's see if that works. When I peel the tape, I try to keep it as close to the tape that's stuck to the wall, at like as an extreme an angle as possible, so that I get a nice clean peel. If you come way down here, it can drag in the paint. So, and then you see I'm balling it up as I go along. It helps me to control it. So again, I don't have to worry about it flopping around. Wigging out. That was super satisfying to peel off. It wasn't perfect, but the masking was pretty darn good. I got some touch up a little bit to do around the edges. Let's see if I can get the camera up like that, okay. But you can see nice clean finish all the way along. And masking takes a little bit of time up front, but it saves you so much cleanup in the end. So like I said before, take the time, mask things off. So I'm pretty happy with that, and you can see, I don't know if you can see the gloss coat on this range hood that I did. Alright guys, so after all of the effort and 2 weeks of work and my house being torn apart, here's the final result.